Side proposition today is going to talk in a realistic context. We have to recognize that the context in the status quo is that these gay-straight conversion therapy does not work. And that's the unfortunate fact that we actually regretfully accept on our side of the house. Essentially, if it is something that's changeable, if it is something that does work, we're happy to accept that. Just like in the case of gender transformation sex that we actually have in the status quo, that does work. But because the unfortunate fact that we bear in the status quo is that this is like this gay-straight conversion therapy in itself does not work. We see that this because the scientific, because we do not have scientific evidence that actually try to say that this is something that's worked. We see, and because this is something that's only being powered and promoted by the religious groups, simply trying to give this hope to these individuals, we see that actually casts the most vulnerable people to simply be devastated, and that's something that we obviously are going to ban. Furthermore, we say that this gay-straight conversion therapy that we're talking in today's debate, in the very realistic context in the status quo, is that it is something that's really extreme, right? You simply try to use extreme tactics, and that's why these individuals will simply have to struggle to change, and that's something that we're not happy on our side of the house. Essentially, we're talking in this status quo, we're not talking in a hypothetical context, saying that it may work. In the status quo, it does not work, and that's the unfortunate fact. If you want to debate in a society where it actually works, we're happy to say that. But we're talking in the context when you consider that the very realistic context in the status quo, no countries actually have this gay-straight conversion therapy that actually succeed, and that's what we're going to talk in today's context. Obviously, we're not going to ban it forever. If to some extent, if someday it actually works, we're happy to accept that. Obviously, we'd say that, so it's not something that works in the status quo. Ultimately, the stance coming from side proposition is that we believe it's completely abhorrent to simply give the glimpse of hope to these individuals. When these individuals undergo and finish this therapy, they are more devastated. We say that the state should not allow the most disenfranchised individuals to go through this huge predicament that they have to undergo through. But more importantly, when the harm it actually leads to is permanent, it's going to bind them in every aspect of their life. That's where we're going to stand from side proposition in a second. So I'll talk about two issues in my speech. First, why it's pernicious to make individuals to go through things that does not work in the status quo when you consider that there's more massive harm than the benefit that they seemingly may expend on that side of the house. Second, why it's going to be better off for the religious gay people, for these people to be able to accept themselves. Yes, please.
So let me just clear something up. You're not principally opposed to the motion, and therefore you also accept and recognize that the choice to change your sexuality, if it represses you, is important.
We say that in the very realistic, in the status quo, what we're talking is that when this method in itself does not work, we say we're going to ban the method in itself when you consider that you simply give this hope to these individuals and simply say that this is something that works. The fact is, the massive harm that you need to recognize on the ground in itself is that these individuals will have to go through, no thank you, more harm, and that's something that we feel hugely problematic. So let's talk about these issues, right? Because we have to recognize that sexual identity in itself is extremely sensitive to these individuals. And when you simply try to prevent more people to accept these concessions, accept your very sexual identity, that's something that's hugely problematic. Essentially, we have to recognize that these individuals on the ground in the status quo believe that sexual identity is not something that's absolute, simply have this hope in themselves to be able to change the situation. We say this is something that's extremely dangerous when you consider that on the very initial stage, on the very beginning stage, you think that this is something that works, but when it fails, and when you realize it fails after undergoing through this therapy, you actually will have more, you think about yourself as a failure, you think about yourself as a traumatic issue, you hate more of yourself, right? And that's why we see this is something that's extremely traumatic when you consider that you're going to go through this therapy and that the consequence is something that's severe, right? But more importantly, why is feeling failure after going through this therapy something that's hugely problematic? Because essentially at the end of the day, when you do not feel any comfortable in yourself and when you're completely devastated, you simply have this desperation of trying to obtain things that you cannot actually obtain in the status quo. But this is something that's even much more problematic when that sexual identity that simply contradicts with your with what you believe in, simply bind yourself, right? So in the case of workplace, in the case of school, in the case of living in a society, you're not going to be able to live in a society when you do not accept your sexual identity, and that's something that we believe that they need to deal with on that side of the house. Individuals have to suffer this traumatic feeling that they cannot opt out, and that's a permanent harm, and that's something that we believe is massive harm that we need to recognize, that we recognize from side proposition. But second, we see that in many cases, and we're rather in a realistic context, in the status quo, when gay-straight conversion therapy does not work, usually these gay-straight conversion therapy actually go through these extreme tactics, right? That's why we see this is extremely traumatic when you consider that you make these vulnerable people subject to those extreme tactics, and that's what we see in the case. That's why even in the status quo, we do not allow people to undergo through this serious operation that does not work in the first place, especially when that is unnecessary. But third, we say that these individuals who actually go through this gay-straight conversion therapy in itself does not understand the consequences in itself. Because it is something that's hugely fluffy, because it is something that's only a potentiality, they do not make an informed decision to begin with. And you simply cannot say that you're more than happy to make it as informed as possible when you consider that there's no evidence that it actually works. It's simply a possibility that you actually will struggle to, will simply hang on to, and that's something that we feel is extremely traumatic. Essentially, this is something that's problematic, this is something that causes physical, mental, and psychological harm, and that's what we believe when the massive harm that struggles the individual, when you consider that the most disenfranchised people are left to harm, we say that the state should intervene. But second, about the religious people, we have to recognize that in case of religious people, these people, when they actually fail these gay straight conversion therapy, believe that they're sinners, believe that they simply betray the God, which means that they are not going to they themselves believe that their self and self is also something that's being accepted in society. But why is something that's extremely traumatic? Because essentially, when you consider that everyone else around you simply denies you, we see this is something that will lead to more and less self-esteem in this sense. We have to recognize that even in the status quo, when people are able to accept that they have a different sexual preference in the status quo, they become more liberating, they become more positive, and they have more self-esteem. Right? That's why we want these individuals to accept their sexual identity, and that's when we believe that they are able to move forward in their life. Right? But second, we have to recognize that in the status quo, when these religious people, when we consider that the characteristic of being Christian and the characteristic of being sexual identity, being gay in itself, is not mutually exclusive, we say these individuals are able to become more compatible. Right? That's why we actually have in the status quo these people who conservatively believe religious value, but nonetheless actually do believe in the case gay Christian, gay identity. Right? And that's something that's beneficial when you consider that the people on the ground will be more inclusive, the society in itself will be more inclusive at the end of the day. So we have to recognize that these gay people who believe in the religion is not making a trade-off at the end of the day, but these people will be more likely to accept their identity, and that's what we believe is a benefit considering the religious people. Mr. Speaker, in this status quo, let's talk in realistic context, right? Because we have to recognize that there's absolutely no no evidence that can prove the fact that these methods actually work. And when we consider that these methods do not work, we believe that the state should not leave these vulnerable people up to the harm, and that's what we believe the state should intervene. We're extremely proud to propose.
Thank you very much for your speech. And now I'd like to call for a leader opposition, the open opposition, please.
So I'm not really sure that Shul can really read this motion properly, right? Because what he seems to not really be opposing is gay to straight conversion therapy, but whether or not it works or not, that's not the motion, right? What you needed to do for government side today is show the fact that the existence of these gay to straight therapies is bad. It's bad for society, it's bad for norms and things like that. But we think all they did today is not actually oppose gay to straight therapies, but they oppose gay to straight therapies that don't work, right? Fine. It may not work in sometimes, but we think that what you needed to oppose in this motion to win on government side is to oppose gay to straight therapy in general, in principle, for our society. We have due to the fact that you didn't do that, don't laugh, we think that you're already losing, right? Let's go on to what we're going to give you today from opposition side. First of all, we're going to clear up the real context of this debate and the context of where society is right now. Secondly, we're going to talk to you about how sexuality should be, how people should not be oppressed by their sexuality. Secondly, we think that furthermore, people have a right to want to change their sexuality and have a right to go along that and work along this and go to these things. Lastly, we're going to talk about discourse. Eel.
So, will you definition challenge or no? So that's a clarification.
Okay, no, okay. First of all, we're going to go into that in rebuttals, don't worry. So first of all,
yes or no?
Okay, first of all, we think that these may work. There are many examples of them working. We don't think that it's okay for you to assume the fact that all of them don't work. Okay, let's go on to the rebuttals. First of all, we think that we have two main rebuttals, right? First of all, what they seem to say is that they're banning this because it's false hope, that it may not work. So what they're essentially saying is that if something has a small mistake, anything that gives you false hope in any way can be banned. Meaning the fact that, for example, religion gives you false hope, fortune telling gives you false hope, supernatural like merchandise and things like that in general give you false hope. We don't think that that's a legitimate criteria to ban anything, right? That makes no sense whatsoever. Just because something may make a mistake, just because something may fail, does not mean that you cannot give them a mistake. That does not mean anything. Thirdly, let's go on to accepting sexual identity. How will, after taking this proposal, people suddenly accept their sexual identity, right? We don't think that, given the context that they showed you, that people are oppressed for being gay, we don't think that works in a word. We're going to show you in our speech how further that's going to work, right? But so, lastly, because Koki-san wanted an example, there are many cases in California where gay to straight conversion therapy is allowed, but furthermore, it is actually in practice that there are many gay to straight people who actually said that they were converted, right? Meaning that there are many examples in our society where it's working right now. We don't think that they have an assumption that it does not work whatsoever. Meaning the fact that this debate is whether or not it's possible or not. This debate of whether or not these people have the right to have this choice of going to this conversion therapy and whether or not the acceptance of this is right or not. Well, we say from government side that it is. But furthermore, we're going to clear up your stance on government opposition side today. Because what we're saying is that your sexuality, you can change it. But furthermore, if there's, for example, a straight to gay conversion, we're happy to support that as well, right? We think that people should not be oppressed by their sexuality, but liberated by it. It can be based on your individual calculation, and we think that's a legitimate criteria to hold from opposition side. Let's go on to the context of today's debate. Nope. Because we think that in long term, we actually do want homosexuality to not be seen as something that can be changed, as an innate characteristic. But we have to be realistic here, right? Where is society right now? Because we think that yes, in many liberal democracies, there is a general acceptance to their to gay people and things like that. But there are many places where the right to gay is not 100% guaranteed, where gays are still oppressed, and there's a stigma and a sense of uncomfortableness towards gay people. In religious communities, gay people are often cast away, are not seen as actual people, and because of this, many people do not like being gay. If they have gay feelings, they are not comfortable with that. They are not comfortable with being gay in general. No. We think that what happens when you ban this is you're going to marginalize these people even more, but make these people who want to change from being gay, who want to get rid of those gay uncomfortable feelings in some way, to not be able to access that kind of therapy. And we think that's wrong. What we think furthermore, no, is that we actually want to prioritize the guaranteed happiness and the content of the individuality in the individual who may actually not be who may be changed to being straight, and we think that's a legitimate happiness for them to hold. Let's go on to first of all what sexuality should be. No. We think that sexuality should be liberating, right? What is sexuality in general? Sexuality is self-actualization. It's a pursuit of happiness. But further, it's something personal, private, and something that is decided by yourself. Whether you are straight, whether you are gay, though this is very controversial, can be chosen by yourself. We think that because of that, it's okay for society to offer the choice to these gay people of whether or not they can change their sexuality. Because we think that currently, if you are a Christian, if you are a conservative person, if you are in a family who is extremely conservative, there are people who may have feelings of being gay, and they are not happy with that. They consider themselves sinful. They are not happy with who they are because of the fact that they have these gay feelings. We think that in that time, it's important for them to provide them some kind of mental stability and outlook for them. And we think that because of that, it is a right for you to want to seek that change within you. And we think that these gay to straight therapies are actually legitimate. I already took one. No. So let's go on to discourse. Fine, you.
Yeah, okay. Would you allow a drug company to sell a medicine that doesn't work?
I mean, we actually do that right now, right? Furthermore, we don't think that something has to be 100% workable in order to be a legitimate, factory, right? We think that that's not a legitimate criteria of whether or not something's banned or not. Look at religion, look at fortune-telling businesses, look at things that are based on maybes, right? We don't think that just because something might not work, it's not right to ban it. Let's go on to discourse, right? Because we understand the fact that this may create discriminatory norms, which we thought that would come from government, but it didn't. Shame. So let's go on to we think that by having conversion therapy, this will actually better discourse in some way, right? Being the fact that there are ideas right now that homosexuality is a disease. It's something that can be changed. And we don't think by banning, let's get this straight. We don't think that banning these gay to straight conversion therapies, that discourse or that idea that you have within your mind will be banned in any way. People who think that homosexuality is a disease will still believe homosexuality is a disease. We think that with these therapies existing, we can actually better that discourse, better the fact that maybe sometimes homosexuality is not a disease, and have the idea come into conservatives' minds. That can only happen with these ideas going in that homosexuality may be a disease. At the end of the day, your sexuality sometimes can be chosen, but furthermore, we don't think that the government opposes this motion in any way. We're happy to oppose.
Thank you very much, Ms. Drafted for the Minister to continue of the case
We oppose this motion in the following way. We don't allow companies to sell you medicine that they claim works, but has never been proven to work. We don't allow people to tell you need to have a surgery when that surgery is actually useless and won't help you at all. We don't allow people to tell you that we don't allow a drug company to tell you if you buy our drug and you take it, you'll get better, if they can't show us that that drug actually makes you better, because that is called fraud, ladies and gentlemen, and there are all sorts of governmental agencies that exist to protect people from that kind of fraud. So, yes, we're not opposing this motion in a principled way. We're happy to concede some of her arguments about if this was real, then it would be okay. If this actually worked, then it would be okay to sell it to people. The same way, if the medicine actually worked, we would be okay to sell it to people. But because the medicine doesn't work, we have to ban it because selling it to somebody would be fraud. And there is no medical organization in the world that recognizes that gay conversion therapy works in any form. There is not a single piece of evidence anywhere in any scientific or medical literature that says your sexuality is changeable or can be changed. So, if they want to debate in a fantasy land, that's okay for them. But usually when we have debates, we try to debate as much as possible in the real world, which is what we're doing on our side of the house. For example, it would be nice if we could give free, unlimited healthcare to everyone in the world. But if in a debate about medical ethics, if one side premised their case on the fantastical existence on free, unlimited healthcare for everyone in the world, that case wouldn't make sense because that's not reality. What we're saying on our side of the house is the reality is that this doesn't work, there's no evidence that it works, and anyone who has looked into the issue in even a cursory way will know that both of these facts are true. And what we stand against on our side of the house is lying to people, defrauding people, and selling to people a product that doesn't work and has never been proved to work in any way. So, go ahead, yes.
One simple question.
Yeah.
Is sexual orientation, like who you like, medically recordable?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it is actually. You can do brain scans of it. But that's not the point. The point is that there is no medical evidence at all that this works. So it doesn't work. And anyone with even a cursory understanding of this issue would actually already know that. And it's their fault that they didn't prepare this case in the right way, not our fault. Like, the proper preparation would be arguments about things similar to homeopathy, or whether it is okay to sell people a placebo. But the fact that they couldn't prepare that case actually isn't our fault, because we're debating in the real world. Now, let's talk about what these therapies actually entail, because they didn't want to go into that, right? They said, in California, it happened or something. Here's something that is common in gay conversion therapy. Forced to watch and masturbate to straight porn for hours and hours and hours. And when you're not able to come to that straight porn, forced to watch some more straight porn, and forced to masturbate some more, and being told that you must come to it, or you are a failure, or you are a bad Christian, or you are a sinner, and you are going to go to hell. This is a common staple practice in gay conversion therapy. We think that this is cruel. We think that this is immoral. But moreover, it doesn't work. And we shouldn't subject people to this sort of horrific physical trauma when there's no hope that it'll even achieve what they hope that it will achieve for them. We think that that is fraud, and we think that that should be banned in any decent society. But moreover, the reality is that your sexuality is not changeable. Your sexuality can't be changed. You can't choose it. No gay person ever said, I chose to be gay. Yeah, it was a free choice. I wasn't born that way. Every single gay person says, I knew I was gay. I was attracted to men. I'm not attracted to women. That's what it means to be an identity. That's what it means for it to be like fundamental to who you are. If it's changeable, it's not. And no gay person will tell you that it is changeable. No gay person will tell you that it was a choice. And so what's the really dangerous, what's the danger of this pseudoscience? What's the danger of this false science? Well, the danger is that it sends the message that this actually is a choice. It says, well, look, there's this doctor somewhere, and he preaches the medical conversion therapy. He's also a priest. So what that puts into the minds of these conservative communities is that it is a choice. It makes them think that it is a choice. And that's why they're so cruel to their family members that are gay. Because they don't want to accept the fact that it's not a choice. They don't want to accept the fact that the person didn't choose this. So they prefer to think of it as a choice so they can think of it as a sin. And when you allow these people to go on TV and say, it works, it's real, despite the fact that they have no evidence. When you allow these people to set up websites claiming that they will cure your child of their homosexuality, it makes parents think that it's a choice. It makes parents think that this isn't something fundamental to their child, and therefore something that needs to be beat out of them, something that needs to be forced out of them through these extreme tactics that they use, almost akin to brainwashing. And what we say is, at a social level, this undermines gay rights in really important ways. Because if being gay is a choice, then it's not an identity that needs to be protected, like race, or like other kinds of identities that are important to people. Because it's not an identity if you're choosing it. So what that means is it massively undermines anything that the gay movement tries to accomplish, based on the idea that it is an identity. Like gay marriage, if being gay is a choice, the case for gay marriage becomes very weak. If gay marriage is a choice, the rights for gays to adopt children becomes very weak. If being gay is a choice, all sorts of rights that are really important to the gay community are fundamentally undermined. But this is a lie. It's a lie that being gay is a choice. It's not. It is an identity. You can't choose it. And so the problem with this is not only does it subject individuals to incredible emotional harm, not only does it give them a false hope of being able to change, a hope that they can never achieve, so they feel even worse about themselves afterwards, because if the therapy is right, then it must be me that's wrong. It must be me that's the failure. It must be me that's the sinner, and me that's not good enough. But moreover, the conception of what it means to be gay at the social level stops being a right that needs to be protected similar to other kinds of identities, and suddenly becomes something that's not so important. Because if it's a free choice, then it doesn't need to be protected the way other kinds of identities do. So what have we told you today in this debate? We've told you that this therapy doesn't work. There's no evidence that it works. Anyone with any cursory understanding of this knows that it doesn't work. That is incredibly harmful to the individual, can be extremely traumatic, makes people feel like a failure, makes people feel like a sinner, but moreover, it fundamentally undermines gay rights at the social level. For all those reasons, we're very, very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your speech. Now, I'd like to call for the deputy leader of opposition, here.
So I was a bit scared when we got drawn against them, but now I'm really happy we got drawn against them, to be honest. Because let's look at their case. They're not against gay to straight conversion therapy. They're not principally opposed to the idea of changing sex itself, because they're willing to have it when it changes. But then, Tom just said, it's identity, you can't change it, which is one big contradiction. But going more onto that, they say, but it doesn't work. Therefore, we should take away the choices of individuals who are being suppressed because of that sexuality. Again, we question right from Sayaka, why isn't efficacy of a certain policy the right criteria to decide whether we should have it in society or not, to legalize or ban it? Again, we didn't really hear anything from Tom. We also need to consider the fact that we also allow operations with very low success rates to happen in medicine and hospitals as well, right? The reason why it's okay is because we prioritize the choice of individuals. We recognize that it might not work, but we also recognize the cost it has if you do not allow the individuals to even try to change the fact that they're probably dying, or in this case, dying socially within that family, right? Because it's something of a personal issue, of such like private and important issue, we think that the choice based on individuals should be like prioritized a lot more than anything else. Uniquely because we're talking about sexuality. Uniquely because we're talking about something so innate to one person. I think it's an area where you need to be willing to give as much choice as possible for the people. Because, like Sayaka told you, sexuality should be something to liberate yourself, and not necessarily something to oppress yourself, right? But moving on to a lot of rebuttal to what they said. Just look at the logic, right? They say it's wrong because it gives you a glimpse of hope. It's wrong because it uses extreme tactics. And it's wrong because you have no scientific proof. Are they talking about gay conversion therapy, or are they talking about religion itself? Because all those things apply to religion. Because religion, it gives you a lot of hope. Religion, it uses extreme tactics. Religion, you have no scientific proof that God exists. Are they also going to be banning people believing in religion? Are they going to oppose the institution of religion as a whole as well, right? We don't necessarily think that they have too much of a clear criteria in this debate. No. But then Tom came up and said, you have no medical literature to see whether it works or not, therefore you should not have anxiety. Again, the POI I asked is very important. Is sexual orientation something you can measure in the first place? Is it something you can scientifically prove? They said brainwaves. Like, seriously, no, brainwaves isn't something that you can see based on, who you like. Even if I look into Sayaka's, brain, it's not going to tell me who she likes. It's just going to tell me that she has a brain and what kind of things that she thinks about. No, sexual orientation is something that isn't medically recordable in the first place, so therefore if we are going by their criteria, it will never happen in their side of the house, because they haven't even given us a way criteria works, right? But moreover, we also need to consider what Tom said about the way these conversion therapies work. Maybe, I've never been to one, so I've got no idea, maybe they're forced to watch, straight porn and all that for a long time. But even if it is that bad, we still think it's something that should be recognized and still think it's something that should be prioritized. Because this argument goes back to what I just said about individual choice. Because we're talking about something so innate to a person, because we're talking about something so private and so important to a person and so personal to that individual, I think that even if the method isn't at best, great right now, we still think the existence of allowing these things allows opportunities for it to be criticized within society as well. Moreover, by allowing more of these corporations and companies to exist in society, you have competition occurring between these corporations, and therefore the method of trying to improve the way to change this conversion will probably change for the better as well. That's something that you can only have, and a benefit you can only have if you're willing to have this corporation and these companies existing within society and these therapies within society. Under their sort of house, these people who are willing to go to these conversion therapies, who recognize that they want to change, who recognize that they are going to be stuck in a huge trouble and going to be oppressed for a long, long time if they do not do this. They may even recognize that they're going to have to watch straight porn for 5 hours a day. But they still opt into this choice because that's how important it is for these individuals. They still opt into the choice because sexuality for them is oppressing them to that extent. And therefore, when oppression is happening to that extent, we think individual prioritization needs to happen, and the choice of an individual becomes much, much more important. But then finally, they said identity is something you should not change. Because you were born with it, you did not make a choice, therefore that's something you should never be able to change, right? That's again a contradiction with what Sho said, because he's saying they're supporting gender change. Gender, did you choose your gender? Did you choose to be a man or a woman? No, you were born into that as well. It's not necessarily a choice that you made, right? So therefore, if they're saying identity should not be changed regarding things that you were born into, then why are you willing to support gender change in itself? Then they said it harms the gay movement. But then if they're willing to run this argument, they also need to be willing to understand the fact that it also goes against their fundamental principle of allowing gender change, right? Because under that logic, the feminist movement should be harmed right now because you're willing people to change their on gender itself, right? Because that's the logic. The moment you allow people to change their identity that they were born into, it harms the movement of one of the choices that exist. Therefore, when you consider that feminist movement isn't necessarily being harmed right now, we don't necessarily think that that harm that they brought up is actually going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's changeable, then it's a different kind of identity. But more importantly, would you deregulate all medicines so that people are free to choose the medicine that they want despite no evidence that it works? Should the government regulate no medical operations at all?
If there are no other alternatives, if every single other alternatives have failed, and if there are no other way, and if that person is 100% going to die, in our case going to suffer for the rest of his life unless we allow this, then probably as a government, we should allow that person the choice. I think it's rather horrible when you say as a government, we have something which may work. But because we have no medical proof of it working, we're not going to allow you the choice, and we're just going to sit there and watch you suffer within that family, within that conservative society. I think that's horrible government, and that's what we do not want. From our side of the house, we want a society where individual choices are prioritized. We want a society where individuals' choices are recognized, a society where individuals' oppression is recognized as well, and a society where the government tries to alter that right, oppression happening. From our side of the house, we also gave the context of this debate. We're not talking about like really liberal states, right? We're talking about a context where the acceptance towards gays are not fully achieved yet, where people are still suffering, where there are people living on a daily basis being told that being gay is harmful, that it's a sin against your religion. In that unique context, you need to recognize that either one of this is going to happen. Under their side, they're going to keep on suffering within that oppression until they die, because they have no way to change it. Maybe they know that this is an option which they could have, but a government is denying them it. Under our side, we give them that choice. We give them the chance, and we give them the ability to try and make a change, to try and get a better life. And for that instance, for that reason, we're very proud to oppose.
Thank you very much for the speech. Now I'd like to call for the government week for Q2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So after 7 or 14 minutes opposition side speech, did you hear any consequence of these kinds of gay straight therapy? No, they just say, I don't know what's happening in the gay therapy, but it's a choice. We should allow it. I think that is an irresponsible stance coming from the opposition side. So that our government always try to makes us people safe, and also that makes a limitation for the freedom of choice. And my partners already illustrate how it is cruel and how it is against the humanity, because the people have to see the gay video for 5 hours. And also then maybe sometimes they use the electrical shock to the people, or maybe sometimes hitting or punching, and they try to and brainwashing these kinds of people. And we say that's kind of a way to try to make us